You're all going to be winners in about 2 minutes. So, again, if you haven't got out those papers and pencils yet, how many people have told me today they were afraid? That's the key word. Afraid makes you stop. It's a stop word. So it doesn't matter if you are afraid. You just need to take that step. That's what an entrepreneur does. That's what an investor does. The fear stops here. So how many want to find a great deal with no for sale signs on it already? Anybody? I thought so. Okay, how about 3 ways to make at least $100,000 on each deal, which is pretty tough in cheap Toledo. Anybody interested in that? You better believe. You're laughing at me. You know you've bought them cheap in Toledo. Okay, how about to be the first person to find that hidden gem instead of being in the crowd of everybody putting an offer in? You ready for that? As a realtor, I'm telling you, we put them in, we line them up by the, by the dates. Okay, and how about learning how to make the offer that gets accepted? How about that? The final goal line, right? Okay, well, let me introduce to you the most successful mentor I know in the United States, and even with Tony Robbins, I've introduced him all over the world. Let me introduce to you Anthony Tony Youngs. Welcome.
Well,
You just passed the thing. You're good now.
Anna. Thank you very much. How about a hand for Anna? I mean, you know, I do some training at all the investors clubs around the United States, and I've never seen one that's so well put together and so organized as I have Toledo REIA. So Anna and her staff deserve a big hand. How about that? And I've never been to any other investors club where she'll go to bat for you to get your taxes lowered. She'll do things, and you know, she'll talk to the local principalities to help you to get better deals on everything. So I've always been impressed with Anna. And she, you know, this whole entire group is the real world of real estate investing. Now, I flew in from Atlanta this morning, and when I finally got to the airport, I thought I was going to be late because I flew into Detroit, and they didn't have any rental cars, so it took a while for me to find one, but I had to go off campus, so I was running late. So I came flying down the highway, making sure I wasn't going to be late. And the blue lights got behind me. But I acted like I didn't even see them. I just couldn't, I didn't have time to deal with that. So I just kept on flying down the road. I got off at the exit, came over here, whipped in the parking lot, and that cop pulled right in behind me. He came running up to my window, and he says, "I've been trying to pull you over for 5 miles. Didn't you see me?" I said, "I'm a forward-looking guy. I never look back." He said, "Look, I've been given tickets all day." He goes, "If you can give me an excuse that I've never heard before, I will let you go." I said, "My wife ran off with a state trooper a year ago, and I thought that was him trying to bring her back." He said, "Have a nice day." So, and you know, when I was on the plane, you know how the planes get so full these days. Well, I just happened to have an empty seat next to me, and I thought, this is great. I got plenty of elbow room. This is going to be great. But right before the door closed, I heard someone running down the jetway, and in walked the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. I mean, she looked like she should be on the cover of a magazine. And so I said, oh my gosh, I hope they don't sit here. Sure enough, that's where she sat. Well, I'm kind of a shy guy, so I didn't want to talk to her, because every time I talk to a beautiful girl, I start saying stupid crap. Anybody ever done that? You know, I just say stupid things. So I picked up a magazine and acted like I was reading it because I didn't want to talk to her. But then she started talking to me. And she said something to me, and I turned and looked at her, and she was so beautiful, I went into a trance. I said, "What kind of a man does a girl like you like?" And she goes, "Well, I like I like Jewish men because they're so successful, but I like Indian men because I love their high cheekbones and their skin tone. But," she goes, "I also like Southern men because I like their Southern drawl." And she goes, "By the way, my name's Amy. What's yours?" And I went, "Geronimo Bernstein, but my friends call me Bubba." So anyway, but I guess I became everything to her. But I learned that in real estate, because how many of you know that when you're dealing with a homeowner that needs to sell their house, you basically have to become everything for them. You have to be a problem solver, because if you learn to listen to someone who's selling their home, they will tell you things on how to make a successful offer. You see, they'll tell you their problems and their issues, and then when you write an offer, you cover all of those issues, so they're all taken care of. A good example is just 2-3 days ago. A guy was telling me, he goes, "Well, I need to sell, but I have so much stuff that I don't know what I'm going to do with it." He goes, I need to move into an apartment, but I don't know what I'm going to do with all this stuff." He goes, "Some of it, I guess, can be thrown away." But he goes, "Then I don't know how I'm going to get my stuff over there to the new apartment. He goes, "I'm 75 years old and I can't move all this stuff." So when I made the offer, I offered to pay the first month's rent on an apartment, get a dumpster so he can just toss the things he doesn't want. I also said, leave anything you don't want and we'll discard it. And plus he was telling me that he was way behind on his electric bill and he was having trouble getting new service at his new place. So I said I'd pay that. Now, I put all that in writing in contingencies. And so I got a real low offer accepted because I took care of all those other problems. Does that make sense? So what I do is I go the extra mile. I'll be teaching you this Saturday how to write offers that get accepted, because that's how I make $100,000 per deal, and I'm not saying in your $25,000 neighborhoods you'll make $100,000. But if you're dealing with homes from $200,000 to $400,000, I can show you how to get deals to where you can make $100,000 profit by going the extra mile for the seller. Okay, so what I do is I do the hidden market. The hidden market are houses that have no for sale sign. As a matter of fact, I will prove to you that sometimes the owner does not even know his house is for sale the day that I contact him. So if he doesn't know his house is for sale, how could any other investor know his house is for sale? So what I do is I plot a course of foreclosure properties. You see, I'm using MapQuest, and I plot a course of the foreclosures in my zip code. And I go out and I go to the first foreclosure, and I will talk to that owner to see if they want to sell. Now, what can you tell me about people in foreclosure? Anybody got any experience? Say again? That's right. They usually don't want to talk. They don't want to sell. They're in, what's the word I'm looking for? Denial, okay? They're in denial. Now, And what's another thing about foreclosures? It's very competitive because they're getting letters from 50 other investors wanting to buy their house. So that really makes it hard for you to get a great deal with a foreclosure. There are people in foreclosure that will sell, but it's a numbers game. But I always go to the foreclosure, and just for the heck of it, I will offer to buy their home or ask if they want to sell. And I know that some will, some won't. But the reason I'm there is not for the foreclosure. Because when I get to that neighborhood, I'm going to drive that entire neighborhood, and I'm going to contact every homeowner in that neighborhood who has no pride of ownership and see if they'd like to sell. So I start writing down all these others. So by plotting a course of foreclosures, I come home with 30 hidden market leads with no for sale signs, but they're distressed. Now, the reason I go to houses with no pride of ownership is because usually there's something going on in their lives. You see, I have the best yard in the neighborhood. I love taking care of my own yard. As a matter of fact, I made my own sign that says Yard of the Month. And I present it to myself, and all my neighbors are so jealous. They go, "Why do you win that every month?" So they work very hard to take care of their yards, but they never win. But one time, my wife and I were not seeing eye to eye, and I thought my marriage was going to fail. And I did not give a damn about my yard. I just started letting it go to pieces. It looked like crap. I took my Yard of the Month sign down. And so when I see houses with no pride of ownership, I feel there may be something going on in their life. Loss of loved one, getting laid off, going through a divorce. Just life happens, situations. So that's why I contact everybody in a neighborhood who has no pride of ownership. Now, then, after I drive that neighborhood, I go to the next foreclosure, and I drive that neighborhood, and I find 3 or 4 more hidden market properties. And I contact them. Now, I like to knock on their door. I know that sounds scary, but I've been door knocking for 35 years, and it sure beats the competition. The way I became a door knocker is because when I used to work just the foreclosures, it was so competitive, the only way I could get a deal was to knock on the door. Because people in foreclosure, they'll get 50 letters of people wanting to buy their home. They get phone calls, they get text. But not many people will knock on their door. And so that's great for me. That's why I was very successful in the foreclosure business. Now, we'll talk more about that. You don't have to be a door knocker, but that's how I became very successful. Now, a lot of times people say, "Tony, aren't you just talking about driving for dollars?" Well, I've been driving for dollars before, and after about an hour or two, I get bored with it because I don't know where to go, which way to turn, and especially if I have someone with me, we're both sitting there going, "Which way should we go?" "Well, let's go over there." "No, I've been in that neighborhood. Let's go this way." And after a while, you just get bored with it. So I always plot a course because it keeps me out there till I finish the course. And I guarantee that I'm going to come home with 30 hidden market properties every week. Or, I do it one day a week. So I get 30 leads a week. So I turn that into 3 or 4 deals per month. Now, I rehab a couple, but I mainly wholesale the others. How many of you know that if you're good at finding deals, there's millions of people that'll buy that deal from you if you find one? Now, in these RIA meetings, you learn every kind of technique known to man. You learn how to do sandwich lease options. You learn how to do owner financing. You learn how to do bankruptcy deals. You learn how to do this and that. But all of those techniques need properties to apply the techniques to. And when you find these hidden market properties, you get to apply every one of those techniques. How many of you have gone to a lease option class, and then for the next year you spent looking for that perfect property to apply a lease option deal? Why do that? Why not find 30 scenarios every single week, and on some of those we'll apply owner financing. On some of those we'll apply subject to. On some of those we'll apply all cash. On some of those we'll wholesale, and some of those we'll rehab. I guarantee if you want to have a steady income in the real estate business, this is the way to do it, because that's why I'm still doing it. I got started in 1986, and I've always stuck to this, doing this, because the way I discovered the hidden market. How many of you have ever been in the foreclosure business? How many? Let me see a show of hands. Well, what is the main goal when you invest in foreclosures? You're always trying to figure out, how can I find out who is about to go into foreclosure before it becomes public? That is the #1 quest of a foreclosure investor. We're always looking for ways to find who is about to go into foreclosure before everybody else finds out. Because see, once you go into foreclosure, they put your name in the paper, and then it's all over the internet. So we always wanted to find the deals before it became public. And the hidden market that's how I discovered the hidden market. Because I would look for homes with no pride of ownership, because I knew there were people in just about every neighborhood that were close to going into foreclosure, but they weren't there yet. So I used no pride of ownership to try to find those people. But that's when I discovered that some people had someone die in the family, and that's why the house looked bad, or they lost their job, or they got transferred, or they're too old and they have to go into an old folks home. So here's a typical neighborhood. Anywhere USA. Do you know that in that one little area, there's somebody whose marriage is on the rocks? In that one area, somebody just died. In that one area, someone is so broke they're about to file bankruptcy. In that little area, somebody is there's a landlord somewhere in that picture that they're not collecting rent. So if that little area has people like that, imagine if you work a bigger area like a 5-mile radius. So the deals are there and they're hidden. Now, if there's all those people are in this neighborhood, there's not a big flag saying, hey, I'm that guy. There's no way of knowing without inquiring or driving every one of those streets to find out who those people might be. Does that make sense? That's my theory, and it works for me. Yes. Oh, I thought you were asking a question, but she was putting her jacket on like this. You can ask questions, by the way. Okay. Now, so these are people with life happens situations. We got people who weren't allowed to work during the pandemic, and then once they were allowed, they didn't want to work anymore. So we've got people that are unemployed. We've got people going through a divorce, people dying, people filing bankruptcy, landlords not collecting rent. There's code violations out there. There's people getting too old. Those are the people that are in a neighborhood. So the first thing I want you to do is believe me. Believe it. Because if you don't believe there's someone in that neighborhood like that, then you're not even going to look. You see, that's why I'm going to be here all day Saturday, because you need convincing. I mean, you've got to believe those deals are in there. And if you believe it, I will show you how to find and buy those deals. And I'm here to tell you, I've been through every kind of class you could ever imagine over the last 35 years. I know every guru. And there is nothing that produces consistent deals than doing exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, I go all over the nation plotting a course and doing this in every single state, and it works everywhere. I always find deals for my people. Okay, now this is my very first deal. This is why I'm a real estate investor. I was working at Lockheed, and I was making $27,600 a year back in 1986. And that was good money back then. But my very first deal in 1986, I made a year's wages, and I still own that house. You see, what I did is I learned how to do, through these RIA meetings, I learned how to do a technique called subject to. That's where you just take over someone's payments. So I got a book on how to buy foreclosures, and I went out to talk to people that were in foreclosure. Now, the way my first deal happened is the grass was 3 feet high, and I looked at the house, and I thought it was a vacant home, because all the other foreclosures had cars in the driveway, and I was too scared to stop. I was full of fear. But when I ran across the vacant foreclosure with 3 feet high grass, I said, well, I'm going to pull in the driveway and take a closer look. So I pull in the driveway, and I start walking around the house looking in the windows. And then I went around to the backyard. There was a 6-foot privacy fence, but the gate was unlocked, so I went in the backyard. It looked like a jungle, and I started to look in the windows. About the time I got to the 3rd window, some lady was staring back at me. She had long brown hair and big round glasses, and she was staring at me, and I'm going, oh my God, it's not vacant. I was convinced it was a vacant house before I went in the backyard. And then I discovered there's people living there. So I freaked out, and I pointed at the back door, because she was looking at me terrified, going, who are you? What are you doing? That's what she was thinking, I'm sure. So I signaled that I was going to go to the back door, and I knocked. And I said, ma'am, I am so sorry. I said, listen, I saw this house was in the newspaper, said it was going up for auction. When I drove by, I thought it was a vacant home. I had no idea somebody lived here. I said, I am so sorry. She goes, yes, it is in foreclosure. She goes, but if you'd like to buy it, come on in. And she grabbed my hand and slammed the door. Now, folks, I had only been in the business 3 weeks. I only went to one seminar. And when that door slammed and she was staring at me, everything I ever learned in real estate went blank from my mind. I just went into a trance. And she goes, sir, would you like to look around? I said, that's a good idea. So she takes me through the house. Now, there is junk everywhere. I mean, there's so much junk you have to cut a path between clothes, and the house smelled really bad because they had pets. The carpet was dingy. It was dark. It was smelly. And I didn't know it at the time. The reason it was dark is their power had been shut off. They were living there with no power. And she would take me upstairs and go, this is the master bedroom. I mean, filled with every kind of thing, like a hoarder, filled with everything you could think of. And I had no idea what to look at, how to look at it, how to inspect it, how to estimate. I just knew this house looked like it needed a lot of work. But the whole time she was walking me through, I'm thinking, how do I get out of this situation? And then my mind said, how did you get in this situation? And I'm going, I don't know. I'm having a conversation in my mind, you know. So she goes, okay. And she goes, come on, let me show you the kitchen. So I'm following her. And in this dark room, we're walking through the den, and I hear a noise in the corner. I think it's a rat or something. I look over, and it's some old man sitting in a rocking chair. And I said, oh, hi, how you doing? She goes, oh, that's my husband, David. I said, hi, David. He just stared at me, didn't say a word. He just looked at me with this weird look. And then I noticed she had already gone into the kitchen and left me in there with him. I was going, wait for me. So I ran into the kitchen. It was very messy. And then there was a front porch, and she said, come on, let's go out on the front porch. And when I went out there, she goes, how much would you give me for this house? I had not a clue. I said, how much do you want? She said, $85,000. I said, is that a good deal? She said, well, all the homes in the neighborhood go for $125, but we'll let you have this one for $85. I said, well, you see, the problem was, I didn't have 85. So I'm sitting there trying to think of what to say or what to do next. So I said, my brain came up, I guess I knew I was a natural-born investor, because the only way I could get out of the situation, my mind said, make a lower offer. So I said, oh, that's out of my reach. I'm looking for something for $65,000. I don't know where I came up with that number, but I knew that I wanted to be low so she would turn me down. How many of you have ever wanted to be turned down? And so I think that actually is the key. If you're full of fear, just make a whole bunch of ridiculously low offers, and you'll get some accepted once in a while. You can't go wrong if you make super low offers. Yeah, what? Well, not at the time. She goes, no. She goes, we're going to hold out and see if we can get 85. I said, okay, thank you very much. And I ran back to my car. That was my ticket out of the situation. So I'm backing down the driveway. Now, this house is up on a hill. I'm backing down a driveway, but I didn't realize the driveway curves like a banana. And I couldn't see the concrete because it was covered in leaves and pine straw. So I'm backing my truck down, looking backwards, and next thing I know, I ran off the driveway, and it's on a hill, so I turned the wheel to get back to the pavement, and the front wheels start sliding, and I was about to do a 180 on the side of a hill in some wet grass. And at the exact same time, somebody started screaming at me. They were going, "Stop, stop, stop." And I was going, "Oh my God, did I run over somebody?" I thought I ran over the mailbox or something. And I looked up, and it was that lady running down the driveway going, "Stop." So I thought she was going to get on to me for messing up her 3 feet high grass. But I rolled down my window. I said, "What is it?" She goes, "My husband said, we'll take your offer." I said, "What offer? Did I make an offer?" She goes, "Yeah, we'll take 65." I said, "Well, what do we do now?" She goes, "I don't know. You're the one that wants to buy the house." I said, "Well, I think we need some paperwork or something." I said, I don't have any. I got to go home. And she goes, "Well, when will you be back?" And I said, "Give me a day or two." She goes, "A day or two? Can't you come back tonight and let's get this thing ironed out?" She goes, "Our home is going up for auction next Tuesday." And this was the Wednesday before. So that freaked me out even more. So I said, "I'll see what I can do." I rolled up my window, put it in reverse, backed out, and sped off at 100 miles an hour because I wanted to make sure she didn't get my tag number. Because hell, I didn't have 65. So I just wanted to get out of there. But when I got home, I started fumbling through the books and tapes that I had bought, because the name of the books and tapes was how to buy foreclosures with no money or credit. So, this lady wants $65,000. Now I got to figure out, how do I do this with no money? So I'm looking through the manual, and there was a whole chapter teaching me how to do this deal with no money. And what is the number one reason or technique to buy a house with no money? Who knows what that is? Pardon? Well, he said OPM. That's other people's money. Well, that's true. Then it talked about subject to. But also, if you get it under contract, you could wholesale the house. So that's what gave me the courage to go back over there. So what is the next step when you find someone that wants to sell? You make the offer. But we are so full of fear, we think we have to do thousands of other things until we talk ourselves out of it. And that's what Saturday is going to be all about. I know the fears that you have, and I'm going to show you how to overcome those fears by writing offers with proper contingencies, and it will eliminate your fear of making offers. So I'm going to show you how to find 30 properties a week that you can make offers on. And then you won't be afraid to make the offer, because I'll show you how to write the offer with special clauses and contingencies. Okay? Every fear you have, you get over the fear with a clause. And you're going to love Saturday. How many of you can come Saturday? You're going to love it. All right, man, you need to start thinking that if you have anything that's not really an obligation, you should be here, because it will change your life about real estate. It will catapult your success. Okay, so anyway, what I did is I bought this house because I had the guts to write an offer with contingencies. And I was planning to wholesale it to another investor. But then I ended up buying it subject to. So the way that happened is, in a foreclosure situation, you have to either talk to their bank, or you have to talk to the foreclosure trustee who's handling the foreclosure for the bank. So I called them to see what the payoff was, because I didn't know. I wanted to know, how much is it going to cost to pay the loan off? And he said, "Well, are you the owner? And I said, no. He goes, well, I can't tell you that. He goes, I said, well, I have this house under contract, so is there any other place I can get the information I'm seeking? He said, wait a minute, you've got that house under contract to buy? And I said, yeah. He goes, I need to see it. This is the foreclosure trustee. So I went to his office and showed him the contract, and he looked at it and he goes, dang, you're going to make $50,000 on this house. And I said, really? When? He goes, that house is loaded with equity. He goes, how are you getting this house at such a great price? He goes, how long have you been doing this business? And I said, about 3 weeks. But I told him the story. I said, hell, I didn't want the house. I told her the most I could pay is this, and she said she'll take it. So he said, look, you don't have time to get a loan. He goes, the first thing you need to do is catch up the back payments and stop the foreclosure. I said, how much is that? He goes, $3,032. He goes, who's doing the closing? Because, you know, it's going up for auction Tuesday. He goes, who's going to do the closing? And I said, what exactly is a closing? I hadn't read that chapter yet. So anyway, he said, look, I will have my secretary prepare a warranty deed. If you can get the owners to come to my office Friday, I will have them sign the deed over to you. You need to bring a certified check for $6,032. I said, I thought you said $3,000. He said, well, that's to stop the foreclosure. That'll bring the loan current. But he goes, they owe $62,000 and you've offered $65,000, so you got to give the owners $3,000. So just bring me a certified check for $6,032 and we'll do it. I'll do the closing for you. So he was actually the one that taught me how to do a subject to deal. Because he was saying, this is how it's got to be done. We're out of time. So he said, if you want to refinance it after the closing, go ahead. So that's how I got this check. He closed the deal. But see, now I'm sure you're wondering, where did you get $6,032? I didn't even have $6,000 at that day, at that time. I had to borrow the money. Now, folks, don't let money hold you back. You've already had 2 people. One of them is really great. I don't know the other one yet, but I could tell that guy in the yellow sweater, he is dead serious. The other guy, there's 2 people that offered to put up money if you bring deals to them. That's all they need is deals. So they'll partner with you, they'll put up the money, they'll loan it to you, whatever. Now, I had a millionaire father, so I had no trouble borrowing. Well, I actually did. He did not want to put up the money. I said, Dad, if you loan me $6,032, I'll double your money. I said, I'll pay you back double. I just need the money to close on it. I'm going to fix it up and sell it, and then I'll pay you back double. Because I was thinking I was going to make $50,000. So he wanted to see the house, and I took him over there, walked him through. He goes, oh, my God. He goes, I'm not putting up money for this piece of crap. I said, Dad, come on, Dad, please. I said, I'll fix it up. He goes, you've got a job. He goes, you've got a job at Lockheed. He goes, how are you going to fix this up? I said, I get off work at 3:30. I still have several hours left in the day. I'll work on it every day. And I did. I convinced him to put up the money, but he put up $7,000 because he wasn't going to put up the money until the closing attorney said, what a fantastic deal. And my dad said, oh, well then, if he thinks it's a good deal, here's a check for 7,000. I said, Dad, I only need 6,032. He goes, well, let's make it a nice round figure because I'm doubling his money. So the more he puts in, the more he gets back. I said, Dad, have you been to one of them seminars too? Because he was trying to get the most he could out of it. But anyway, so that's how I got this deal. Now, what happened is I refinanced after I fixed it up. But how did I fix it up? I didn't have any money. I had $900 left out of my dad's $7,000 after paying everything. I bought a bunch of paint with that and painted that house myself. I rented a shampooer and shampooed the carpet 2 or 3 times. I scrubbed the cabinets with white vinegar. I scrubbed the appliances with Easy Off. And all I had was elbow grease. I didn't have the money to fix it up. So once I've cleaned it up and fixed it up, I went down to a bank and said, hey, what I did is I put a for rent sign in the yard, and I got a renter with a 18-month lease. And then I took that lease to my bank and I said, I want to refinance my income-producing property. They said, well, we can only loan you 80% of the appraised value. I said, okay, how much is that? So they did an appraisal. It appraised at $126,900. So they gave me a new loan of $100,000. That new loan paid off the owner's $62,000. They took out closing cost, and then they handed me a check for $27,000. Now, if you notice, I had to pay taxes on this money I earned at Lockheed, but I did not have to pay taxes on this. Who knows why? Yes. You see, you don't pay taxes on borrowed money. That $27,000 is part of the $100,000 loan the bank gave me. But after paying off the underlying loan from the homeowner, this money's left over. So I got to pay that money back, but I'm not paying it back. Who is? The renters are paying the payments. So can I spend that money any way I want? Yes. Now, isn't that the greatest business in the world? So all I did was I split that check with my father. I gave him $14,000. And then I went out with my money, what was left over, to do another deal. And everywhere I went, somebody was following me. And I kept looking back, and someone was right on my tail. I pulled over to see who was following me. It was my dad. He was going, come on, son, let me put up the money, please. Let me put up the money. I said, I've got my own money. Get out of here. So, but I have used him several times. You know, he is a millionaire. Might as well use it. Okay. All right. So I bought a second deal with what I got off that deal. And then I repeated the process. I took it over subject to, I paid $5,800 for the second deal. Then the third deal, the bank would not refinance it because I had been doing a deal per month. And he says, hell, you're trying to refinance. He goes, you're getting so many loans. He goes, I don't want to give you any more loans. I said, why? I've got them rented. That's who's paying the payments. They said, well, what if they go vacant? What are you going to do? So I put that third house up for sale, and I got a check for $52,000. So now I get 2 deals under contract, and I'm trying to clean them up, that I had to play hooky from Lockheed. And Lockheed called me and says, hey, did someone die in your family? I said, no, why? They said, well, you haven't been to work in 12 days. I went, I forgot. Because I was so busy fixing up those other 2 houses that Lockheed was in the way. And I used to go to Lockheed because I got a check every Thursday. But I have $60,000 in my checking account from those first several deals. So I just told them I'm not coming back, and I sent them a resignation letter. And then I became full-time. Now here's full-time. This was the 7 ways to profit. I was a money-making machine, because what I would do is I would send letters to all the people in foreclosure, but I would knock on the doors of the ones in my zip code. So I was always trying to buy from the owner before they lose their home. Okay. A lot of people had no equity because they had a second mortgage. So other investors didn't want those houses. So through these RIA meetings, I learned a technique called how to discount junior liens and mortgages. So you should always attend every month, because there's always some great speaker that's going to teach you a technique, okay? So I learned how to discount liens and second mortgages and turn bad deals into good deals. Deals that no one else wanted, because I would just call the second mortgage lender and offer to pay those off at 10 cents on the dollar. Who knows why the banks would do that in a foreclosure? Because what? That's right. Okay, he had the perfect answer. In a foreclosure, if it does go up for auction, the second mortgage and junior liens usually get wiped out. So that's why if you buy from the owner before the auction, the lien is still there, but you call and offer 10 cents on the dollar, and they'll take that because they know if it goes to auction, there's a chance they won't get anything. So they go for the for sure deal. So that was a great technique. And then if the owner, someone said it earlier, when you knock on doors of people in foreclosure, 9 out of 10 homeowners will say, no, it's not for sale. Nobody's taking my house. And they believe it. But, so for those people, I would call the bank and ask them if they wanted to sell the loan. Through these RIA meetings, occasionally you'll have somebody teach you how to buy notes and mortgages. Okay. And then I would go to the auction. So I would spend my weekends going out and talking to people in foreclosure, offering to buy their homes. But then I would go to the auction to see how many houses went up for auction, and I would make notes of every house that went back to the bank. And the very next morning, I would send offers to every house that went back to the bank. So that's why I would attend auctions, not to bid. Who knows why Tony Young's does not bid at an auction? Because I'd have to pay more than you guys. You see, at an auction, you have to outbid every other investor in your town. And they laugh at you when you walk away with the deal because they stopped bidding at a lower price because they've done their research. So I just said, hell, how am I going to make profit if I outbid every other investor? Especially if I want to wholesale to those investors, which is something I'll be teaching you in a minute. Okay. And then at the auction, if they had 20 houses they were going to auction off today, some of them they don't auction because the homeowner filed bankruptcy. And if the homeowner files bankruptcy, they're not allowed to auction the house because bankruptcy stops a foreclosure. So at the auction, I would make a list of all the people that filed bankruptcy. because I learned how to buy those even while the bankruptcy is active. And no other investor knew how to do that. I took bankruptcy law because when I was knocking on doors, say to people in foreclosure, I'd say, hey, would you like to sell your house? Nope, I'm just going to file bankruptcy because it stops the foreclosure. But then I'd see their home go to auction anyway, and I'd say, how did that happen? So I took bankruptcy law to find out why their home goes to auction. So next person that tells me that they're going to file bankruptcy, I can explain to them that they could still lose their home anyway. And that made them invite me in. And that's another thing that made me successful, is because I would explain the pros and cons of bankruptcy. Now, you always got to tell them, hey, I'm not an attorney, but I am a graduate of bankruptcy law, and this is what I know. Okay. So, and then while I'm working the foreclosures, I'm finding all the other hidden markets in the neighborhoods that I'm in. A money machine. Now, that produced the most fantastic life I've ever could have imagined. But I've slowed down on the foreclosures because during the pandemic, there were no foreclosures. So if I'd have just been a foreclosure investor, I would have gone broke. But the hidden market is the real answer. I could care less about the foreclosures now. Give me the hidden market. Because when I go to the foreclosure, 50 other people want to buy that house. So even if they allow me to make an offer, they're going to call some of them other investors and say, can you beat this offer? But you go down the street to the house with high grass and knock on their door and say, do you want to sell your house? Nobody's sending letters to them. Nobody else is talking to them. The owner doesn't even know his house is for sale till I knock and say, hey, do you want to sell? And then that's how I discover when they answer the door, they say stuff like, yeah, my wife just died, or my husband just died, and I got laid off during the pandemic and haven't worked since. So yes, I need to sell this house. Or I knock on the door, and the reason the grass is high is because the guy is so old he can't even cut the grass anymore. So he will tell you at the front door, he'll say, I need a place with no stairs and no yard. Well, I can fix you up. I'll buy your house and I'll help you find the other. And that's why I'm successful. And you will be too. We just got to get you over the fears. Okay, now here is a foreclosure auction. The guy with the circle around his head is the auctioneer. Now, at my auction, if you win the bid, you have to pay cash on the spot or certified funds. Even if the opening bid is $1 million, you've got to pay $1 million right there in certified funds. So I go out and find 30 hidden markets every week. Then I go to the auction and sell to these yahoos. Now, the reason I do is because they have tons of money, and half the houses they buy, they haven't even seen the inside. Can you imagine going up to someone's house in foreclosure and knock on the door and say, hey, I'm going to bid on your house tomorrow. Can I see the inside? They would shoot you. Okay? So these guys, they have more money and they're risk takers. So you can sell every house you find to them on, say, a wholesale basis. Now, was there a transactional lender at the vendor tables. When they got up here and spoke, was any of you guys a transactional lender to where you would put up money for a double close? I don't see any volunteers yet. But anyway, we're going to talk more about that because that's a good technique for wholesaling. Okay. Now, so I don't go to the auction to bid. I go to meet other investors. I go to get a list of all the homes that go back to the bank. I go to get a list of all the bankruptcies. And then I pursue those deals. But I also want to see how much these guys are paying. They generally pay 80 to 90 cents on the dollar for a property. I'm going to have you finding deals for 70 and 60 cents on the dollar by the time I'm through with you on Saturday. So if you're finding them for 60 and 70 and you can sell them to these guys for 80 and 90, you make profit even if you don't have time to rehab houses. Okay? Yes. Well, if you ask that question in the class Saturday, I can prove how to do it. Because what you have to do, her question is, if the auction is online, how do you meet these investors? Well, I teach you how to go through court records to get the names and addresses and contact information of the investors that buy the houses, because it's all in the courthouse records. And I usually can pull that up in the class. Okay. All right, so here is a typical hidden market. Now, this one does not have high grass. There's something about when you get really good at finding hidden market deals. You can drive through a neighborhood and you can spot vacant houses, even if there's a car in the driveway. There's just, it's like a sixth sense. Does anybody in the room have that? Yeah, there's a couple of people, see? So I looked at this house and I said, that house is vacant. Now, that's the car I was driving. That's why there's a car there. But I pulled in because for some reason, it just felt, I just had this feeling about this house. And it wasn't the high grass because it didn't have it. So I knocked on the door. Nobody answered. So I looked in the front windows just to see if it was vacant. And there was garbage piled to the ceiling, just a whole bunch of black garbage bags. And then I couldn't tell what it was. But I went around to look at the meter, the electrical meter, and it was working. So that, if it wasn't working, I would say, sure enough, it's vacant. But it was working, so now I'm confused. So I went to the neighbor, and I said, look, I'm looking to buy a home in the neighborhood, and this house next door is interesting to me. I said, does anybody live there? He goes, oh, yes, a guy lives there with 30 cats. And he goes, that house is so disgusting. The neighbor said, I have turned him in to the code enforcement, trying to get them to make him do something. Because the neighbor said that there's such a stench coming from that house that he feels that he's going to get a disease. So he just does not like the guy. So I said, well, I knocked on the door, nobody's home. I said, do you know when he comes home? What kind of car does he drive? He doesn't have a car. He comes and goes. I have no idea if he even works. But he said, you just got to keep trying. So I wrote a note saying, hey, I'm looking to buy a home, wanted to know if you'd be interested in selling this house. Put it on the door. I came back the next day, the note was gone. I knocked on the door, and then I said, so then I wrote another note, and then I came back the next day. See, That if you guys have ever been doing anything like what I'm teaching tonight, if you're not super successful, it's because of failure to follow up. Follow up is the key. And that's what I'm discussing right now. I went back 3 days in a row. And the note was gone every time. I skipped a day, and I went back the 5th day, and he was home. Now, normally when you leave a note and they don't call you, your mind is going to say, they must not want to sell, else they would have called. It's not always true. Watch this. So I knocked on his door and he answered. I said, hey, I'm looking to buy a home in the neighborhood. I've been very interested in seeing if you'd like to sell yours. I even left a few notes. He goes, yeah. He goes, the code enforcement is going to condemn the property. So that's why he didn't call. He thinks he can't sell it. The code enforcement gave him a notice and said if he didn't have that place fixed up in 60 days, they're going to condemn the property. I said, are you going to fix it up? He goes, I can't. He goes, I don't have any money. I don't even have a job. He goes, my mom died and left this house to me. And I'm getting, some sort of income from something. So he goes, I said, well, why don't you sell it to me? And then they won't have to condemn it. He goes, oh, this is beyond repair. It needs to be torn down. He goes, all the floors are rotten. There's been, the toilets and sinks have leaked for 20 years, and all the floors are rotted out. He goes, the house needs to be torn down. I said, can I see the inside? He goes, man, I'm afraid to let you inside because I'm afraid you'll fall through the floor. I said, I've seen worse. I said, come on, let me see the inside. So he goes, okay. Well, when I'm walking through the house, he's going, oh, don't step right there. Don't step there. I thought I was trying to walk through a landmine, but there were roaches on the ceiling, on the walls. There were cats jumping out of garbage everywhere. All those big garbage bags was household garbage. He didn't have a garbage man. So he just threw it in one room. It was filthy. Now I know what the neighbor was talking about. But I was turned on. See, that kind of house turns me on because I know I'm going to get a good deal. You can't go to a pretty house and get a house dirt cheap. Here's what I asked the guy. I stepped out in front of my car. I said, I think I can fix it. I've done much worse. I said, I'd like to buy it. How much would you sell it to me for? He goes, I don't know, 20? Now the home, the neighborhoods, the comps were 165. And he said he'll sell it to me for 20. So I said, okay, I'll give you 20. I went to my trunk, I went to my files, and I pulled out a blank contract and wrote an offer on the hood of my car for $20,000. He goes, my mom left this house to us when she died, so my brother owns half of it. Does he need to be here? I said, yes, he does. He called his brother and said, hey, there's some guy to give me $20,000 for the house. And the brother said that, when they were going to let him condemn it, the brother said, you'll have to move in with me. So he had a place to go if they condemned the property. So his brother came over there, and he looked at the contract, and he said, man, he goes, what about all the stuff? He goes, if he moves in with me, I don't want anything in this house coming in my house. So what about all this stuff? I said, you just leave it. I'll take care of it. He goes, man. He goes, I feel like we're ripping you off. Should we make it 10? I said, well, I had already written it up for 20. I said, no, let's leave it at 20. I said, if my inspector finds anything big, we can renegotiate. But I said, let's leave it at 20. But he was willing to make it 10. Now, folks, I bought this house. I fixed it up. There's where I bought it for 20. This is what it looked like after we cleaned it out. So you know it was bad, but then I put $62,000 into it, and I put it on the market for $199.9, and it sold the first day, $200 cash. So I made $107,000. $107,000. Now, we rebuilt all the floors, we did everything, and I actually had a film crew film the entire project. Now, the reason that it's so interesting is because the code enforcement came over every week. They said, look, they said, just because you bought the house doesn't mean we go away. We want to condemn this house. He goes, are you going to be able to fix it up in 60 days? I said, I'll give it a hell of a try. So they came over every week to see our progress. They were so impressed, they said, hey, you know what? Take all the time you need. You're doing a great job. So, and here's one of the things they wanted us to do. You see, on the outside, on one wall, there was flaking paint. It was lead. So you either have to scrape it off, but you have to build a big tent and put on hazmat suits to do this, or we just told the code enforcement, we're just going to go right over the top of it with new siding and seal it in. He goes, that's a great idea. Because he didn't want all them flakes floating around anyway, especially with that neighbor. So that's what we did, is put 9 sheets of plywood over on this wall, and that solved that problem. But we sold that house for $200,000 and made $107,000 profit. And nobody, now let me ask you, was there a for sale sign in that yard that day? Did anybody else know that house was for sale? Did the owner know the house was for sale? That's the power of the hidden market. I know it's super competitive outside in these neighborhoods, but not if you work the hidden market. Okay, now this house, I was rehabbing a house down the street. Yes, go ahead. How much taxes did I pay?
Well, how did you structure it?
Well, I did have to pay tax.
I know that.
Yeah.
Did you pay short-term capital gains, or did you pay?
Oh, I had to pay short term, yeah. Yeah.
So maybe you had a cool structure.
Well, you know, it's funny you say that because I've done so many rehabs since the pandemic. And I have my dad died, so he doesn't put up money anymore. But when you find the hidden market, you get hundreds of thousands of people wanting to put up money for you. Because when you're really good at finding them, everybody wants to, oh yeah, you wanted to. Next time you ask a question, put it on tape. Okay, so when you are good at finding deals, everybody with money comes to you and says, hey, cut me in, I'll loan you money, I'll do anything. So I got this other partner that he said that he is tired of paying short-term capital gains. So we're rehabbing a house right now, an excellent deal. And he wants to take at least a whole year so that we don't have the short-term capital gains. But it's funny you brought that up. Okay, now this house, folks, let me see how much time I got. Oh, did you have a question? Who had one? Oh, gosh, I got to move on, man. Okay, so this house, I was driving by because I was rehabbing a house down the street. And every time I drove by this house, I always noticed that window was always open. And then I drove by at nighttime, and there was a light on inside this window, but never, ever was there any other light on. So one day I just decided to stop. I sensed it was a vacant house. So I knocked on the door. And sure enough, it was vacant. Nobody answered, so I crawled through the bush to look in there. And that light was on all the time. So I went to the neighbor. I said, hey, what's going on with that house next door? I'm rehabbing a house down the street. That's what I do. I buy houses and rehab. I said, hell, I'd like to buy that one next door. She goes, oh, that guy, he died 2 weeks ago. So I said, does he have any family? He goes, well, he got divorced 20 years ago. I don't know whatever happened to her. But he did have a daughter, but she lives in Alabama. I said, I'm sorry to hear that. No, I'm kidding. I'm a Georgia Bulldogs fan. So if you're from Alabama, I'm sorry. But I do like Alabama because all my nephews went to Alabama. But anyway, so this girl lives in Alabama. And so I asked that neighbor if they knew how to get in contact. She goes, no, she came for the funeral, and she went inside the house, and I haven't seen her since. But I don't know how to contact her. Now, Saturday, I know Anna has a skip trace program, but I also have one that I'll be able to show you on Saturday how I find people. So I found that daughter, and I called her. And this is before probate even began. See, I get 2 or 3 probates per month, and I get them before probate begins. And I'll show you how I do that on Saturday. I'd love to do it now, but I can't. So this particular one, I asked the lady, I said, are you planning to sell that house? She goes, you know, I can't believe my dad left that house to me. She goes, it is so disgusting. I've got a life, a family, a great business out here in Alabama, and now I've got to deal with that stinking house. She did not like that house. So I said, well, I'll buy it as is. She goes, you'd buy that house as is? I said, yeah. She goes, well, make me an offer. I offered, it was worth $275 after repairs, but I offered $106, and she took it. And she signed the contract because the will said that he left the house to her. So she was able to sign the contract before probate began, but I couldn't buy it or close on it until probate is over. But once probate begins, people contact her. But she says, it's already sold. It's already sold. Leave me alone. Okay, so I fixed it up, and this is why she didn't like it. When she saw the inside, and the bathrooms were worse than that. And he left this house to her, and all she could think about is, I got to fix that up, or I got to clean that up. I don't even want anything to do. So she got $106,000 from me. That's good enough for her. So what I did is fixed it up. I put about 60 or 70 into it, and I sold it for $275, and then I made $136,000 on that one. Now, this house was in a $375,000. This is during the pandemic, this particular deal. I kept going to that guy's house, and he never would answer the door. I left letters. I called him on the phone. He never would answer. So I asked the neighbor, I said, what is going on with this guy? I mean, that house is terrible. He needs to be in a condo or an apartment or something. I said, I'd like to, do you know anything about him? She goes, yeah, I take care of him. He has diabetes. I dress his wounds. And she goes, I go to his mailbox because he has cataracts. He can't see. She goes, there's no way he's selling that house. He has no relatives. But I've been trying to get him to write a will. That's what she said. She said, I'm not even writing a will because I have no relatives. And I'm never going to move. I want to die here. So she said, you're wasting your time. I said, man, I wish you could convince him because I could clean that place up. She goes, it ain't going to happen. Well, a couple of months later, she called. The neighbor called and said, hey, I found him passed out on his floor. He died. She goes, I don't know what's going to happen to the house now. So I said, well, she goes, if there's anything you can do, now I think you can buy it. So I knew the state was going to take the house, but I went on my skip trace that I'm going to show you Saturday, and I found his mother's sister in Colorado. So I contacted her and talked her into being his personal representative. I hooked her up with an attorney, a probate attorney. She said, look, I'm not getting on a plane and coming to Georgia. She goes, there's a pandemic. I'm 70 years old. She goes, I don't want nothing to do with it. I haven't seen him or talked to him in 15 years. I said, what if you can do everything over the internet? She goes, I'll do that. So I gave her, she did that, and I gave her $126,000 for the house. Because it was the pandemic and the lumber prices were outrageous, I put $90,000 in that house. Now, this is before I knew I was going to get it. Because she wouldn't come, and she wanted me. She says, if you take care of it, I'll sell it to you. So that's going the extra mile. You see, I didn't know if I was going to get that house at this time, but I would cut the grass and keep it clean. And she wanted me to go inside and get rid of all the garbage and food. So I did that, not knowing if I was really going to get the deal. And plus knowing that once probate begins, she's going to get a lot of people wanting to buy it. But she sold it to me. I fixed it up. I was going to put it on the market for $375, but my real estate agent says, we're not selling that house for $375. I said, well, what, am I too high? He goes, hell no, you're too low. We're putting it on the market for $450. I said, oh, we're not going to get $450. The highest comp is $375. He goes, $450. Sure enough, the first day we got $450. So anyway, I made $218,000 net profit. Everybody say, nothing but net. Nothing but net. That's one of my better ones, and that was during the worst time of the pandemic. Okay, and then right as I was coming home with that check, one of my tenants called and said his dad died. He goes, do you want to buy his house? I said, where is it? He goes, it's in close to downtown Atlanta. I said, well, I don't want to go to downtown Atlanta. I'm not interested. He goes, oh, come on, man. I don't want to deal with it. So I went ahead and looked at it. It didn't need any work, just paint and carpet, but he sold it to me for $181,000, and all I did was put paint and carpet, hired someone to put paint and carpet, and I sold it for $275. So there's hidden markets that don't need a lot of work too. But anyway, so the hidden market is there's just no competition. There's no for sale signs. There's no ads in the paper. Nobody even knows these homes can be bought. I was going to show you this other deal, but I'll show you Saturday. Well, I'm going to show you. There was one guy that hired me. He said, look, I'm afraid to knock on doors. He goes, Will, how much could I pay you to take me door knocking? He goes, I don't want to do it in a class. I want you to do it by myself. So we agreed on a price. And we're driving. He wanted to knock on foreclosures, but on the way to the foreclosure, I saw a rundown house with a U-Haul in the driveway, and I told him to stop. I said, let's talk to the people. He goes, you're wasting my time. I paid a lot of money for your services, and now you're telling me to go to this house? I want to go to the foreclosure. I said, hey, when you see a U-Haul in a distressed house, you always stop. We ended up buying that house, and we split a check for $76,000 because he was so terrified to do the deal that I partnered with him. He said, the only way I'll buy it, he goes, I didn't think it was going to happen this quick. So he goes, I'm scared. He goes, would you partner? So I partnered. him and I split a check for $76,600. And there's the house. Was there a for sale sign in the yard? Did the owner even know the house was for sale that day? Nobody even knew this house could be bought that day. So that's how you do it. You find high profit deals that no one else knows about. You're the first and only offer. And you find free and clear probates, but anyway, now folks, I'm going to be training you this coming Saturday. It's $99 if you're a non-member, and if you're a member of the RIA, it's $49. But no matter which price you pay, I guarantee you're going to be so glad you came. You're going to be, you will know how to do a hidden market deal when you leave that class that day. You'll probably find one on the way home, and you'll call me. Now, I also, if you're still apprehensive about just learning in a classroom, because the real world is out there, so I also take people out there, and I hold your hand, and I make offers with you and for you. So some people need that kind of hands-on training. So I will be doing one of those next month, if you want, here in Toledo. Now, that's a little more expensive. But what I do is I come out here and spend 3 days with you. And we go out, we knock on some doors, we find some vacant homes, but we make offers. I take you through the whole process. I say, okay, here's a house. We just found a house. Here's how you do the research. Here's how you make the offer. And I do it for you, but give you the money. Last time I was here, I got a deal for the class, and I put it in my name, and I closed the deal and gave them the check. And but now they know how it works. So they learn from hands-on training. So there's classroom and there's hands-on. So I'm going to plot a course when I come back for the hands-on training. I'm going to plot a course of 10 foreclosures. We're going to go out, we're going to inspect them, analyze them, estimate repairs. We're going to write offers, do title search work to see if there's any liens on any of the houses we find, because I know one of your fears is, what if I buy a house with liens? Impossible after I train you. You will never buy a house with liens. And we're going to make offers. And then we're going to wholesale the houses to other investors. Now, here's a nurse that I trained, and she said, I've been so afraid to quit my job and do real estate full-time that I went part-time for a month. However, I have so many deals undergoing rehab that I had to quit my job. She goes, and the scary thing is all these investors are coming to me, giving me money to buy these deals because she's good at finding them. So all the people with money are saying, here, use my money, cut me in. You see, be good at finding the deal, and you'll never have to use a dime of your own money. But it's going to be Toledo, October 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. That's a Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. From 9 to 5, it's $1,997. Now, if you have a spouse that says you're not spending that kind of money unless I go, you can bring them too. Okay. Now, you do get a home study system, 16 DVDs. Those are filmed of me in action, out in the field, buying houses. I have films of me presenting offers to homeowners at kitchen table. I have films, that system has every kind of film, me inspecting, estimating repairs. But Modern technology, don't laugh. That entire system is on this thumb drive. Because didn't want to do that, but you're the ones that told me I don't have a DVD player. What is a DVD player? So this is modern today. But that entire system is on this. Now, here is the Anna. That looks like Anna, right? That's Anna from Memphis. In other words, that is the club leader. I did one of these 3-day trainings for that club, and this was the superstar that came out. She did like 10 deals after the training, and she's become the club superstar. Okay, here's Grand Rapids, Michigan. This girl, she's making $10,000 for finding deals that she never even touches a hammer or a nail, but she's getting deal after deal after deal and getting $10,000. She was a school teacher and she quit her job. And then this is the Toledo check after I got the closing. They sent me the check and I sent it back to the class. I'm making $100,000 per deal. These are all the deals I've been doing in the last 2 or 3 years. But if you sign up tonight, it's $9.97. Now here's something that no one else offers to do. First of all, how many times have you had someone that you bought a book or a system and they personally came out and held your hand and proved it worked in your own backyard? There's other people that say, oh, you come to Florida and I'll teach you. So anyway, this, I'm going to be there. Now, I also do weekly training webinars. I'm live every week to keep you updated and motivated. How many of you have ever gone to a class, the first 2 weeks you were super excited and then it just fizzled away? And you go, whatever happened? That won't happen with the hidden market, because every week I keep you updated and motivated. I say, look, this is what I'm doing this week. This is what I recommend you do this week. And if you do this, you will be successful. I guarantee that your day has arrived, folks. Start by signing up for that Saturday class. You know, at least do that, because you will be able to buy a hidden market after that Saturday class, and it's only $49. Okay, I'm way over, so I'll be in the back of the room answering questions. But anyway, get signed up either for the 3-day training and live mentoring from me for the rest of your life. You will always have me. Yes?
When wholesaling a deal, how many pages is your assignment contract?
Just one. Yeah, we're done. We're over time. So anyway, thank you, folks. Now, I want you to come back Saturday. Where's that going to be? Should we hand out these? I got some forms. I want y'all to fill out this form and get signed up for Saturday. And you did them? Oh, okay, great. All right, way to go. See, I told you it was the most well-run RIA I've ever been to. Breakfast and lunch, you can't beat that, folks. So anyway, I just want to re-emphasize, you saw a price of $19.97, but during this week it's $997 for the ongoing mentoring, the 3-day training, and the home study system. And the first 2 people that sign up will get this DVD. I mean, this. Remember the $20,000 house? I filmed the entire rehab, and it's all on here in 7 hours worth of video training. I'll give everybody one that signs up, but I only have 2 with me.